Hare Krishna. We're studying Bhagavad Gita as it is, chapter 7, entitled Knowledge of the Absolute, text 7. Chapter 7, text 7. In this edition, it's on page 371, but you have probably different editions. So it's chapter 7, text 7. It's April 14th, 2023. Bhagavad Gita. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Bhagavad Gita, chapter 7, text 7. Matang Parataram Nanya Kinshid Asti Dhananjaya Mai Sarvam Idam Potam Sutre Mani Gana Eva. So now we'll do one line at a time responsively. This is Bhagavad Gita, chapter 7, text 7. Again, in this edition, it's page 371. So Bhagavad Gita, chapter 7, entitled Knowledge of the Absolute, text 7. Mata parataram nyanyat Kinshidasti Dhananjaya Mai Sarvamidam Protam Sutre Mani Gana Eva Mata Parataram Nanyat Kinshidasti Dhananjaya Mai Sarvamidam Protam Sutre Mani Gana Eva Mata Parataram Nanyat Kinchidasti Dhananjaya Mai Sarvamidam Protam Sutre Mani Gana Eva. Would anyone else like to chant the verse?
Manaparataram manyat Kinshadasti Dhananjaya
Kinchidasti Dhananjaya
Visaramidam Protam Sushamani Ganaiva
Mata Parataram Nanyat Kinchidasti Dhananjaya Mai Sarvamidam Protam Sutre Mani Ganaiva. All right, so now we'll look at the word. Yes, please. Mata Parataram Nanyat Kinchidasti Dhananjaya Mai Sarvamidam Protam Sutre Mani Ganaiva. Would you like to choose not to? All right. Mata. Beyond myself. Parataram. Superior. Not. Anyat. Anything else. Kinchid. Something. Asti. There is. Dhananjaya. O conqueror of wealth. Mai, in me, sarvam, all that be, idam, which we see, protam, strung, sutre, on a thread, manigana, pearls, eva, likened. Yes. So Bhagavad Gita, chapter 7, text 7, translation. O conqueror of wealth, Arjuna, there is no truth superior to me. Everything rests upon me as pearls are strung on a thread. Purport by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. There is a common controversy over whether the supreme absolute truth is personal or impersonal. As far as Bhagavad Gita is concerned, the absolute truth is the personality of Godhead, Sri Krishna, and this is confirmed in every step. In this verse, in particular, it is stressed that the absolute truth is a person. That the personality of Godhead is the supreme absolute truth is also the affirmation of the Brahma Samhita. Ishvara Pramana Krishna Satchidananda Vigraha. That is the supreme absolute truth. Personality of Godhead is Lord Krishna, who is the primeval Lord, the reservoir of all pleasure, Govinda, and the eternal form of complete bliss and knowledge. These authorities leave no doubt that the absolute truth is the supreme person, the cause of all causes. The impersonalist, however, argues on the strength of the Vedic version, given in the Shvetashvatara Upanishad, Totoya Nitaratam Tadarupam Vanamayam Ya Etadidar Amritas Te Bhavanti Ate Tere Dukam Evapiyanti. Quote, in the material world, Brahma, the primeval living entity within the universe, is understood to be the supreme amongst the demigods, human beings, and lower animals. But beyond Brahma, there is the transcendence who has no material form and is free from all material contaminations. Anyone who can know him also becomes transcendental, but those who do not know him suffer the miseries of the material world. The impersonalist puts more stress on the word arupam, but this arupam is not impersonal. It indicates the transcendental form of eternity, bliss, and knowledge, as described in the Brahma Samhita quoted above. Other verses in the Shvetashvatara Upanishad substantiate this as follows. Vedaham etam purusham mahantam aditya varnam tamasa parastat tam eva vidvanamita bhavatunanya pantavidyate ayanaya yasmat paramna Param asti kinchet yasmananiyo na jayosti kinchet. Quote, I know that supreme personality of Godhead who is transcendental to all material conceptions of darkness. Only he who knows him can transcend the bonds of birth and death. There is no way for liberation other than this knowledge of that supreme person. There is no truth superior to that supreme person because he is the supermost. He is smaller than the smallest, and he is greater than the greatest. He is situated as a silent tree, and he illumines the transcendental sky. And as a tree spreads its roots, he spreads his extensive energies. From these verses, one concludes that the supreme absolute truth is the supreme personality of Godhead, who is all-pervading by his multi-energies, both material and spiritual. Hare Krishna. So I'm going to recite a few more mantras to continue to invoke auspiciousness in our Sangha, in our gathering. Om Anganatimmirandasya Gnanjana Shalakaya Chaksharidmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayamupakadamayam Dadati Svapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Uttapadakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Saganaragnatam Vitam Tam Sajivam Sarvetam Savadutam Parijana Sahitan Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sagana Lalita Shri Vishakan Vitamstra Hey Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dinabandhu Jagat Pate Gopisha Gopika Kanta Radhakanta Namostute Tapta Kanchana Gaurange Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Vanchakalpati Yubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhye Cha Patitanan Bhavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadara Shri Vasari Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prestaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swami Niti Namine Namaste Saraswati Devi Glavani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Deshatar. Bhagavad Gita chapter 7 text 7. Mata parataram nanyat kinchidasti dhananjaya mai sarvam idam potam sutre manigana eva. O conqueror of wealth, Arjuna, there is no truth superior to me. Everything rests upon me as pearls or strung on a thread. Okay, so Krishna's giving a simple yet sublime analogy here. So just like it's there's a string of pearls. All right. So maybe like someone with that, like let's say a small child, and you think, oh, the pearls are just magically hanging in the air. But now with a little knowledge, we see, no, they're not just magically floating. No, there's a thread. There's a thread that holds them together. Well, do you see the thread? So, no, we don't see the thread, but we see with the eyes of knowledge. So Srila Prabhupada will often emphasize that this whole seeing thing is overrated. Often hear that. Yeah, well, if there's a God, why can't I see him? If there's a God, let him appear before me right now. Yeah, I mean, yeah, right. So, okay. So Prabhupada emphasized, most all the knowledge we get is even in a mundane material sense, it's through the hearing sense, through the hearing sense. Yeah, not through seeing. Actually, there's a Canadian scholar named Marshall McLuhan. He coined the term "the medium is the message." And yeah, but he also he gave an analysis that with the invention of the printing press, then knowledge became mostly about sight, about seeing, like seeing the print. But before then, in human society, it was understood that knowledge comes from all the senses, all the senses. But then since the invention of the printing press, then that's been narrowed, which is a very Vedic conception. So Prabhupada will emphasize that point. So just like, yeah, because I'm not a man of faith, I'm a man of reason. I only believe what I could see. So, yeah, so like, do you believe in atoms and electrons? Do you believe they exist? Oh yeah, of course. So you've seen atoms or electrons? Well, no. Well, you just said you only believe what you can see. So basically, that no one here has seen it. But like we've heard from authorities that we trust. I'm not saying we shouldn't trust them. That's just a different discussion. We've heard from our science teacher in junior high school. We read a book, a scientist, the university. So do you believe that Tibet exists? Oh yeah, of course. So you've seen Tibet? Maybe some of you have. But so we can use some other country. But no, I haven't seen Tibet. But you say you only believe what you can see. Well, I have friends who've been to Mount Everest. So it means you trust. You trust someone, or I saw a documentary on PBS. So you heard from people you trust. So we get knowledge from hearing. Or let's say, do you believe that the governor of Florida exists? Governor of Florida. Well, yeah, of course. Have you seen him? No. Well, you just said, yeah, so we're just dismantling the whole idea. Like, this is rational. I only believe what I can see. Well, even let's take the governor of Florida example. It's like even like a relatively important person in this world, let's say, but like, okay, so now let's say if I if I wanted, or you wanted to see the governor of Florida. So would that work? Like, yeah, if the governor of Florida exists, let him appear before me right now. Come on. That's not the process. Now, there is a way to see the governor of Florida, just like there's a way to see God. There is a way. There's a and the process would probably be like, we think of some important reason why the governor should give me time. Then I approach the secretary of his secretary and I write a letter and we make it. There's a process. There's a process. We could go through the process to actually see. But it's not like, till I see, I don't believe. Okay. So, all right. So this whole Bhagavad Gita, there's many processes, but all these processes culminate in this process of bhakti. Okay, so bhakti, it's the spiritual process of serving with love and devotion, serving with love and devotion. So, yes. So I'll emphasize that point about process. That because I know myself from an early age, I was never interested in religion. I still remain uninterested in religion. But like every morning I spend like 6 hours like chanting these mantras and studying these books and doing these kirtans. But also from an early age, I have been interested in processes of transformation. I dedicated my life to support and facilitate transformation, communication-based approach to transformation, like that. I've been so that's why Prabhupada he uses this term. Actually, the very last instruction of Bhagavad Gita, Krishna says, "Sabadaman pritya mame kam sharanam braja aham tvam sarvapapebhyo mokshaya shami ma shita." So Krishna, he says, give up all religion, give it up. He said, and just surrender to me, surrender to God with love and devotion. Okay? Meaning, like, if there's some religion, whether it's religion or yoga or some scholarly process, if it gets in the way of heartfelt surrender to serve God with love and devotion, then what's the point? Dharma sanustapum sam vishvaksena katasya notpadya duritim shrameva kevalam. Whatever we're doing, whether it's in our occupation, our relationships, in any sphere of life, if it does not inspire enthusiasm for devotion to God, shrama eva kevalam, then it's a useless waste of time. Useless waste of time. So as we all know, like what goes in the name of religion, a lot of it has become like dry, hollow formulas, this and that. So, but so Prabhupada used the term science, a science of self-realization, right? Not religion in the mundane sense. And if we get to the roots, like of the Latin of the word religion, it really has the same meaning as yoga, right? Like yoga, the English word yoke, means to connect in its essential sense, the self connecting with itself, encountering itself honestly, and self-discovery, and self-turning towards the supreme person in a spirit of devotion. So if we get to the real essence of religion, that's what it's about, even in terms of the word meaning. But science, like two pillars of the scientific process. One, we have a theory, a hypothesis. So you can say the hypothesis of the scientific process of bhakti, and that's here, it's Bhagavad Gita. And Bhagavad Gita discourages blind following. And we're encouraged to apply our intelligence to this philosophy. And we're welcome. Try to find faults, ask questions. And then if we're sincere, we're not just attached to being a cynic. If we're sincere, I know that was my process, still is to some extent. But back in the summer of 1983, I backpacked around Europe. And I stopped for 4 months. I backpacked around Europe before I went to the Middle East. I lived in the Middle East for like 8 years. Backpacked around Europe, and I stopped at an ashram outside of Florence, Italy, called Villa Vrindavan. And I read Bhagavad Gita as it is, cover to cover. And I was trying to find flaws, but I needed to acknowledge. And in the years before that, I read some of Prabhupada smaller books, and I needed to acknowledge, like, this is by far the most intellectually satisfying, logical, rational system of thought that I've ever encountered. Like, and there wasn't a close second. So then I thought, well, if I like to consider myself an honest person, because Bhagavad Gita, it gives not just a systematic philosophy and theology. It also says, and here's a process. Here's a process you can follow to whatever extent you choose. And that's the other pillar. There's hypothesis, and the other pillar of scientific method is experiment or experience. Experience. Krishna said in Bhagavad Gita, Raja Vidya, Raja Guyam, Pavitramita Mutam, Jakshivaka Damyam, Dushukam Partumabhyam. He says this process of bhakti, it's directly experienced. Right? So we can experience the cleansing of the heart, experience the transformation of consciousness. And that I'm speaking from experience, not that I have too much experience, but I have enough drops of experience in the ocean of the nectar of the ocean of bhakti. I have a few drops of experience to know that this works. I wish I would like be more intelligent and take it more seriously and all that, but I had enough experience, 47 years to know, oh, this actually works. It's not just I believe. So all aspects of philosophy, we're welcome to apply our intelligence and see if it makes sense, and then to practice the process and have an experience like that. So it's like, okay, right, different thought exercises Prabhupada often uses, right? Say like, okay, we will say like, if we imagine we're looking at a photo of ourselves from when we were 5 years old, do we say, who is this person? No, we say, oh, that's David when I was 5. And you say, that's Gary when I was 5. Now, we know from science, there's not one atom, not one molecule in the body now that was there at 5. Right? We can say the body grew. I was just hearing a lecture about Prabhupada, but we said we can say the body grew, but that's not true. It's not like the molecules got bigger. No, the parts are completely different. Like the parts are completely different. Like everything's changed. All the electrons. There's not one thing the same. Still, there's some constant identity. I call Dana. You call Virginia. That indicates that identity is something completely non-material. Najayate miyate vakarachin nambhutva bhavita vanambuya ajonicham shashvato yamparano nahanyate hanyamane sharire. So that's Bhagavad Gita. For the soul, there's neither birth nor death, nor having once been does the soul ever cease to be. Right? The body ceases to be, always changing. The soul is primeval, eternal, everlasting, unborn, undying. The soul's not slain when the body's slain. Dehinosminita dehe komaram yoganam jara tata dehantara praptir dirasta tranamuyati. As the embodied soul continually passes in this body, from childhood to youth to old age, the soul similarly passes into another body at the time of change of body we call death. More precisely, because we say, oh, there's a time of death. So just as that irreducible quanta of consciousness, that non-physical entities, that's the actual me. That's traveled through a toddler body and a teenage body and young man body, and now the body's into its 60s, then there's the time of death. But more precisely, not to be morbid or anything, but really the body's always dead. Just a fact. Just like let's say if the body's always dead. Just like, let's say there were some aliens from the galaxy Andromeda, and they were to visit the planet Earth, and they would say, let's see, oh, so there's these living entities called Chevrolet and Mercedes and Renault and Volkswagen. Sometimes these other living entities, these kind of parasite living entities called humans, get it. But But no, you see, like no, the Volkswagen and the Dodge and and the and the BMW, they're actually it's that they only appear to be alive when the driver gets in. See? So similarly, because the car is made of dead stuff, rubber, plastic, it's always dead, but it appears to be alive when the driver's inside. Yeah. So similarly, the body's made of dead stuff, but the body, appears animated when the driver's inside. The driver, that's the atomic unit of sentience. That's us. So okay, so we can see just by, it's not even about I believe. It's just like this is logic. Whether someone's, but I'm a Muslim. I'm black. I'm white. I'm Catholic. I'm Chinese. I'm Latin. No, like the body changes, and there's some constant identity, and the constant identity is we just demonstrate with it's non-physical. So it's a lot, and then the nature of the constant, the nature of that spirit soul, that irreducible quantum consciousness that is us, is blissful and joyful. So this gets to like the open secret, right? So to the extent that we realize who I am is not the body, you don't want to neglect the body. We don't want to neglect the car. But in taking care of the car, I don't want to think I am the car, and that would be some like serious mental illness or something, right? So to the Bayam Dvitiya Binivesha Tasya, that's a text from the Srimad Bhagavatam that says the root cause of all anxiety, suffering, insecurity, we've all experienced those things. The root cause is misidentification of the eternal spirit self, its temporary material body. It's the root cause. That's the root cause. And so, because we can do whatever other processes, psychological, emotional, philosophical, we can do whatever processes to the extent that we're still misidentifying with dead matter, we're going to be tormented. Just fact, just like if we drop an object, gravity will pull it down, just the law. And to the extent that I'm realizing who I am, Jivaras Hupoi Krishnera Nichidas, Krishnera Tatasta Shakti Beta Beta Prakash, to the extent that I'm realizing who I am as not the body, as spirit soul, as servant of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Sri Krishna, then the natural bliss of this diamond soul is radiant. Natural bliss of the diamond souls. So this is a practical process, which we can experience ourselves as soul, and we can, with the eyes of knowledge, we can, because even not just we don't see God with our material eyes, we don't see ourselves to the extent that I'm thinking you're that body and you're that body and I'm this body. We're not seeing ourselves. So through a genuine spiritual process, we develop spiritual eyes. We spiritualize our senses, and we begin to actually realize ourselves as spirit souls. Again, so this is the eyes of knowledge. This verse is knowledge. Again, let's take another example, because it's like, so these eyes are very limited. Let's say, let's say a small child, again, same example as the prozone, looks at the sun, and the child is, the sun is this yellow circle in the sky, 3 inches in diameter. But that's what the child sees. Now, we also see the yellow circle in the sky 3 inches in diameter, but we know it's not a yellow circle in the sky 3 inches in diameter, right? But that's what because we see with the eyes of scientific knowledge. No, this is massive stellar body, 1.4 million times the volume of the Earth planet, because we're seeing with the eyes of knowledge. Okay, so this is like a process through which we can see through the eyes of spiritual knowledge, and as like they might say, a cornerstone of the process is chanting divine names. Harinam, 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 Eva Kevalam, Kelon, Steve, Agatya Anyata. Okay, which means, especially in this current age, the most powerful process is to the most powerful process for self-realization and to develop love of God is to chant the names of God. And this is universal. This isn't just like Hare Krishna. And, I was I lived for several years in Muslim villages in the Middle East. I lived for several years in Muslim villages. We would have programs like in their big town hall, their village halls. And at some point we have our japa beats, and they would take you up there, masbacha. Masbacha, they chant the names of Allah, right? And we would chant together because they all understood this is universal process. I remember we were living, sometimes we would visit Nazareth, not Nazareth, Pennsylvania. Not talking about Bethlehem, Pennsylvania either. It's a local joke because I grew up in Pennsylvania. So there are towns, Nazareth and Bethlehem. But no, this is like Bethlehem, where Jesus appeared, in Nazareth, where Jesus preached. And we would stay, we would stay at the, I guess it's a convent monastery of the Italian sisters. It's right by the Church of the Annunciation. These very beautiful places. This is a church at the spot where Mary heard from God that she's going to be the mother of the Messiah, the mother of Jesus. Mary, actually, if we want to get more into the language, so I analyzed it recently. Actually, Jesus has 5 letters, and all of them are wrong. No, each one of the 5 aren't even close. Aren't even close. Just for fun, I thought to mention that. So I think Mary's name would be Miriam. Mary's name would be Miriam, as far as what they're actually called. And because the Hebrew doesn't even have the letter J, so there's no way they were saying Jesus. But and then even because there's 2 separate letters. There's S, and then there's Sh, and they're different letters. So it's Yeshu. And then even at the end, you got this kind of this very throaty sound that English, Western tongues don't do. So the second S isn't in the vowels. Anyhow, so but we can appreciate, this pure devotee of God who appeared. And so, so we would, the church, this is where Mary heard that she would be the mother of the Messiah. And there's a beautiful church there. And the church is international, so we would go there. We would have our Mangal Arti, today we started at 5 a.m. with these songs. We had a Mangal Arti in the pews of the church temple room there at the convent of the Italian sisters, about a 2-minute walk from the Church of the Annunciation. And then we would take a japa walk at the church, and they have got different outside. They have this courtyard, and there's one section of it, I guess, donated by the Japanese Catholic diocese. So they have a Mary and Jesus looking very Japanese. Then they have a corner of the courtyard from the French diocese. And Mary and Jesus look distinctively French. And there's from Ethiopia, and very, very dark skin, Mary and Jesus. So like that. So, everyone has their, and we would chant japa there. And sometimes we would do Harinam Sankirtan in Nazareth Takhtit. That's the lower town. Nazareth Elite is an affluent Jewish suburb. And Nazareth Takhtit, that's where Jesus actually preached. Takhtit means lower. It's it's in the valley. So we would do Harinam Sankirtan, and the nuns would come out and join us in Harinam Sankirtan, because they understood this is the universal spiritual practice. This is the universal spiritual practice. So and Prabhupada would emphasize that, it would say if he would be in Iran, or if he would, Prabhupada I was just listening to a talk. He's at a Franciscan diocese in Australia. He's talking to the brothers, the monks, and the priests. And he said, Prabhupada would say, well, if Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. If that's not your preferred names of the divine, then you have names. You have names. You have Christ. You have Allah. Then chant those names. And if you don't happen to have a name, here's this Hare Krishna. And that's what, so Prabhupada, it wasn't about conversion. It was about convergence. So this chanting the names of the divine, and then that moves us to more and more want to give up the lower superfluous pleasures of life and dedicate ourselves and dedicate ourselves to serve God unconditionally with love and devotion without considering about our happiness. Then of course the irony is, then we're really happy, because that's our nature. That's the nature of the soul, to serve God, to serve the personality of Godhead. And then, okay, we're doing some ancient references. So like, right, related to this verse in purpose, or Prabhupada, he's making a distinction between impersonalism and personalism. And we can note, one thing we can note in the very next verse, Prabhupada writes in the purport, practically speaking, there's no conflict between personalism and impersonalism. One who knows God knows that the impersonal conception and personal conception are simultaneously present in everything, and that there is no contradiction. So it's important. Right? It's not like a battle. It's just like, it's about appreciating all aspects of God, all aspects. So the next verse reads, Rasoham apsakanteya, prabhasmi sasi suryayo, pranavasaravedeshu, shabdakeli pursham nrishu. So Krishna says, I am the taste of water. So God, right there, we taste water, and that can help us to remember our source. I'm the light of the sun and the moon. So have you seen God? Yes, I've seen God. We have ever seen the light of the sun and the moon? Yes. Yes. We've tasted God. We taste the taste of water, the essence of all. I'm the syllable Om in Vedic mantras. I'm the sound and ether and ability in man. I was hearing a lecture. Here's a lecture for this thing. I'm the sound and ether. It's almost like the chirping birds and like that. And then Prabhupada was referencing this verse, I think maybe New York in the 60s. And like at that time, like some real like loud, ugly airplane sound or something came by, or some city sound like that. And then Prabhupada says, that sound is also Krishna. So we can think there's, beautiful, pretty sounds. But the idea is Krishna is the essence of everything. Now, the question is, how much realization do I have to realize God everywhere and in everything? Ishvara sarvabhutanam videshe arjuna tishtati brahmayan sarvabhutanam yajrudani mayaya. So Krishna, God's in the heart of all living entities. True. Now, there's the regulative principles of freedom, and to the extent that we give ourselves to these, then we realize God and everything. Otherwise, as Prabhupada's talking about here, sure, everything's God, but mostly I tend to relate to Krishna's different energies in a way that sends me more and more into forgetfulness about who I am as spirit, soul, and who I am as servant of the supreme personality of Godhead. So right there in the beginning of Genesis in the Old Testament, there's a term, B'Tselem Elohim. B'Tselem Elohim. So that's Hebrew. So it means it's in the image of God, right? Humans were made in the image of God. I know when I was in Israel starting in 1983, and I was, I knew some Hebrew from my bar mitzvah days, but basically, I learned conversational Hebrew, and the term, one of my services was to make tzilums. A tzilum is a photocopy. Tzilum, so it's the same. So God's saying that like the human form is a photocopy of God's form. So let's take that. Let's look at tzilum. Tzilum means, so just like, so let's say we have a photograph. Let's say we've got a few. Let's say we had a photograph of us or something. Photograph of a group. All right. So, and in the photograph, well, there's you got your nose, and there's the arms, you got the hair. Okay. Now the photograph has no substance, but from the photograph, but from the photograph, we can understand the actual person must have eyes and nose and hair and arms. The photograph hasn't. So similarly, we have personality, and we have, right? And we hear and we see and we talk and we taste and we move and we relate and we communicate and we participate. So therefore, all of those functions must exist in its pure form, in its substantial form, in our source. It means our source must also be personal. There's a poem by William Blake. William Blake wrote, "God appears and God is light to those poor souls who dwell in night, but does a human form display to those who dwell in realms of day." So it's quite a poem. So it's a little couplet. God appears and God is light. So, oh, God is light. That's wonderful. And then he goes, to those poor souls who dwell in night. He has a lot of realization there. God appears and God is light to those poor souls who dwell in night, but does a human form display to those who dwell in realms of day. Okay. He's maybe in the previous life he memorized Bhagavatam or something. So yeah. So I mean, it's like so Prabhupada's making the point that, like, sure, a devotee of Krishna, devotee of God, appreciates the oneness of all energies, and appreciates that the source of all energies is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Okay, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So this is a process, devotional service, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And again, it's like we're encouraged to applying our intelligence to Bhagavad Gita. This is part of the process of bhakti. Chanting Hare Krishna, part of the process of bhakti. It's just like it's described in the second chapter. Neha brikar munasho state prachavarana vijite swapamapyasti dharmasya trayate mato bhaya. So Krishna says, in this process, there's no loss or diminution. It's not all or nothing. So like we take to it 1%, then we experience 1% of the joy that's there, of the soul coming alive to itself and serving God with love and devotion. And we're encouraged, give 100%. Give 100% so that we're not forced to take another body that's subject to the miseries of material existence. Janma Mrityu Jara Vyadi Dukkha Dosha Anudarshanam. We're not forced to take another body after the soul leaves this body. We're not forced to take another body that crammed up in the womb, and then the disease, and then the deception, and the cheating, and the confusion, and death. Prabhupada will often emphasize that these are the 4 real problems: birth, death, old age, disease. And human life is a special opportunity to solve these problems, to get out of this samsara cycle. And the method is, this is a very world-embracing process, bhakti. It's not world-rejecting, right? Just like, okay, earlier in the program, so we're dancing and we're singing. Oh, dancing, singing. Well, that must be material. We want to do spiritual things. No, but we're dancing and singing in devotional service to Krishna. So it's taking our natural propensities to communicate, to eat, our natural to relate, our natural propensities to do art, to be creative, to use our intelligence, and using them in a way that liberates us from the illusion that I'm this body. It moves us to deeper inspiration to realize who we are as servants of God, servants of Krishna. So this verse that we're reading today, text 7, chapter 7, it's Mata Parataram Nanyat Kinchidasti Dhananjaya Mahi Sarvamidam Potam Sutre Manikina Eva. O conqueror of wealth, Arjuna, there is no truth superior to me. everything rests upon me as pearls are strung on a thread. Hare Krishna, thanks for your presence. Thanks for your attention. I welcome at this time if anyone would like to share any comments or realizations or ask any questions, comments or questions.
I'll go.
Gajendra.
We're not this body.
Yes.
We're completely distinct from the body. The
Yeah.
body will completely disintegrate, perish, be no more, and we're going to completely exist. Every part of our fundamental being. So we are completely separate from this body in one sense.
In one sense,
But
yeah.
while we are in this body, we've been placed in this body and don't really have a lot of choice about whether, it seems to me, we don't have a lot of choice about what we, experience. Granted that there are some people that get really focused on the body,
Yeah.
not as materialists. I want to really enjoy the body, but in their pursuit of spirituality, thinking I'm not this body, they do all kinds of things and related to the body, like standing on one foot, or
so many things,
or growing their fingernails long, which it's really hard to play the guitar, so it's a horrible thing to me. But it's there is this. It's like I feel like we've for however long it is that we're alive in these bodies, we're placed in a situation where we have to deal with this body. It's like there's going to be, like something starts biting you. It's like, not this body. It just doesn't work like that. Not really. So it's really tough. So we have this idea of understanding these things. We hear the philosophy, we're spiritual and not this body, and it makes sense. But it really seems like it always is going to come down to where the understanding is in practice more about where we place the priorities of our life. Like understanding that I'm not my body, I don't put all my energy into investing in my body, which is going to be completely lost. But we focus on this part that is, it's eternal. I think you say you brought up that one verse in Bhagavad Gita, 1866, I believe it is.
1866.
And Krishna does sort of use a form of the word dharma in there.
He does,
because there are all these other sort of dharmas that aren't the essential dharma. But he ultimately is talking about like abandoning all these other dharmas. But actually embracing, the true dharma.
The Sanatana Dharma, the true dharma of the soul. Yes, he is.
But I just, just coming back to it, it's interesting, even amusing. And I'm not really sure about this word. I'm not used anymore. But you were talking about like, the body is always dead. And I'm just saying, we're basically a society of necrophiliacs or something like that. That weird thought, Dan. But how to really, like, we're kind of forced to have this relationship with our body. Like, okay, if we think we are the body, then it's almost sort of like we're not conscious, we're like, but if we do start to that separation where it's like a relationship you can't get out of other than dying. And it is almost like it's a situation. It's quite a situation. I don't know. It's just. It's a weird situation.
It's an awkward situation. Paul could use the word awkward. I appreciate your sharing. Thank you, Gajendra, for it. Well, that's what we say. It's a world embracing. In one sense, it is a body embracing process. But there's the vehicle analogy. The vehicle analogy. So, like, if I want to get from here to Orlando, all right. So I have a relationship with the car. So I make sure there's gas, and I make sure the tires have sufficient air. I make sure it's gotten its tune-up. Take care of the car, right? Because the car, I use the car to support me in my journey, in my journey to get to my goal, Orlando. So the Vedas are like a manual how to use the body for truly meaningful purposes. Essentially, that Tamasyanendriya pritir labo jiveta yavata jivasya tata jigyasa natayascha karmabi. So it's described that we're encouraged to not make the goal of life to enjoy the senses of the body or the subtle material body, the mind. Because human life is meant for self-realization, realization into the absolute truth. Absolute means that truth which is good and true and valid in all time and space. So if I say, I'm David Wolf, I'm 62 years old from Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. So that's not absolute truth. Was I David Wolf from Philadelphia, Pennsylvania 1,000 years ago? Will I be David Wolf for 1 trillion years? No. But I'm not the body, I'm spirit, soul, I'm servant of creation. That's absolute truth. So to use the body, to use the temporary to serve the eternal, to use the relative to serve the absolute. So that's what it's described by Rupa Goswami. Anasaktasya visharam yataham upayunjata nibandha Krishna samdayuktam vairagya muchyate. It describes that real renunciation isn't just like going to the desert and I'm going to renounce my life. Real renunciation is being in the body and cultivating renunciation from the material enjoying spirit, and using this really, because I could say, I'm not the body. This is my body. Just like this is my body, but I'm not the body. But even that, we can go further than that. It's not my body. This is God's body. I'm renting. It's not mine. I'm not owning. I'm renting. So this is God's body. Let me use it in God's service. That's the relationship we're encouraged to cultivate, to the extent that we want to make perfect use. To the extent that we want to perfect our relationship. Prabhupada used the example, like if we find a wallet on the street. So the material mentality is, there's $800 in this wallet and credit cards. I can use it now. Wow, that's material. Then an impersonal mentality, which shows more integrity, is like, this is not my wallet. I will not touch it. But the most integrity, the highest, where we feel most good about ourselves, at least ideally, is like, this is not my wallet, but it is someone's wallet. And so I'm going to return it to the owner, because it's for him to enjoy the $800. It's for him to enjoy the credit card. I'm going to return. So similarly, in one, it's not even my body. That's not precisely true. This is Krishna's body. Let me use this mind. Let me use these arms. Let me use this mouth. Let me use the resources in the bank account in my name. Let me use the car in my name. Let me use it in Krishna's service, because it's Krishna's wallet. So that's the relationship we're encouraged to cultivate by the Vedas. All right, Krishna. Malin.
Just want to follow up on the question here, because in Krishna consciousness, and when we give ourselves fully to God, it's not like there is no satisfaction of the senses.
Yeah.
In fact, the real satisfaction of the senses comes from God. Because before that, there is satisfaction of the senses leading to a lot of frustration. And also the satisfaction of the senses kind of limited by the fact that this body is limited.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I'm also reminded of King, I don't remember his name. I think it's in 6th canto. 6 or 7 canto. The king that he wanted to go back to Krishna because Krishna showed him himself and he was serving. And then Krishna said, no, you're going to stay here and enjoy because you need to kind of clear up your good karma.
Yeah.
Remember that king?
Okay.
And he was, but can you do that? You can do that in service to me.
Interesting. Yeah. Maybe the King Priyavrata, that's 5th kingdom. Priyavrata.
I'm not sure.
Okay.
Not sure.
But that's it. Yeah.
Because
Yeah. Like he was, Krishna was saying, no, you need to stay here and enjoy it. So.
you need to stay here and enjoy. Exactly. That's what Krishna, well, Lord Krishna says.
I'm just saying, like, it's not about rejecting enjoyment. Those verses in Bhagavad Gita, Machas Parshas Tukante Shitoshna Sukadukada Agamapai no Nichas Tam Titikshas Bharata. So, like, in the course of fulfilling our eternal dharma of serving God with love and devotion, sometimes materially there's going to be enjoyment, and sometimes there's going to be distress. Like sometimes it'll be the weather is just how I like it, and sometimes it's so cold, it's so hot. Sometimes we'll be sitting on a comfortable seat. Sometimes like this kind of uncomfortable. Sometimes people will praise us. Sometimes people will insult us. And Krishna says, like, don't make more praise and more comfy seats. Don't make that the goal of life. So like whether things are nice or not nice materially, continue with enthusiasm and steadiness. Yami navyate antete pusham pusharshaba. Samduka sukham dhira somitatbaya kalpate. Continue with steadiness on this path of devotion. That's the liberated consciousness. Johnny.
I've been thinking about in the Bible it says, this is how they will know you're my disciples, that you love one another. And then all throughout the Bible it talks about like ways to love one another. Service, to help the poor, help those in need, to bless those who persecute you, bless and do not curse.
Oh, yes.
If someone is evil to you, repay them with good. And a lot of these verses speak about how, like, in these moments of serving others through love, you're actually serving and loving God.
Yeah.
And I feel like there's a lot of alignment in this verse of like seeing that spark of God, of Krishna in each other, and really,
Well, I'm moved by the thing, the spark of God, the spark. Thanks for sharing that. Yeah, that's very beautiful. And that way, right? So this doesn't reject it, encourages, of course, kindness and compassion, and kind of like as a celebration of God's glories. Yeah. Serving each other on all levels as like enhancing our appreciation of Krishna and Krishna's qualities.
Very, like, I get to energy.
Thanks for that. Beautiful. Yeah, I appreciate that too. I got something from that. And contemplating the verse from today. Like when you said that, I was just getting this more like heartfelt appreciation of like that thread really is the Lord kind of running through all, like if we're the pearls, but like the Lord running through all of our hearts. It's really one part. Really connected very deeply in that way. Somehow when you spoke of this way,
Thanks for that extension of Johnny sharing. Thanks for that. And that's it's poetic and beautiful, but it's not just like poetic imagery. Like you said, Sarvasya Chamriti Sanivista Krishna. There is an expansion of Krishna sitting right next to us in the region of the heart. And there's an expansion of Krishna called Paramatma, that is the soul of our soul. And so I like to use the full inspiration energy. But like, we practice this process of devotion service and get more in a realization of God in the heart of all living entities, then naturally we're respectful, naturally we're honoring, naturally we want to serve. Hare Krishna.
Yes, that's really nice. I know in my own path, coming from just being a gross materialist and having a harsh intellect, when I think about verses like, like how the self-realized sage is, looks at all these
Equal vision.
the dog, like, but even getting beyond that and really embracing everyone as part and parcel of Krishna. Like when I walk into a room, becoming aware of how much more in the past I would just sort of have so many judgments happening.
Yeah.
So many that I'm not even conscious I'm making.
Yes.
Like, oh, this person's attractive, like all this stuff's going on, and there's so much I almost can't even see it. And more just like unconditionally, no matter who I meet or what's happening, embracing that, like it's all under Krishna's control. Everyone is like not, just being in touch, not merging or losing my individuality, but just also really experiencing there is that, the other side of it, the oneness side of the, and it's not just about me and Krishna, because everyone is Krishna, which leads to this, the other thing that you have mentioned in your class about sort of like the person who would just sort of say, show me God.
Yeah.
Like I want to see God. But I was, and of course I'm thinking about, well, I mean, there's nothing that isn't God. I mean, can you show me not God? Because it's all God. Once you have heard and begin to really properly conceive of God through hearing, and so I'm publicly declaring I do not believe in atheists today. I just believe people have misconceptions. Yeah, I don't believe in atheists. They don't
actually exist.
Because people with a poor finding knowledge.
There's a verse that says, the heavens declare the glory of God, the skies proclaim his works. And that reminds me of what you just
Repeat.
The heavens declare the glory of God, the skies proclaim, I want to say it says his works.
His works, wow.
The works of his hands. Day after day, they perform speech. And as we were walking and chanting this morning, I saw some birds on a telephone line. And I was thinking about like, there's a verse that talks about how God clothes the birds of the air that are here today and tomorrow thrown into the fire. And so, there's a spark of God in that bird. There's like God's protection on the bird.
Thanks for that. Thanks for that. Yeah. So that's and that's the verse after one, which I cited today, the that reminds me of that biblical verse you just cited, right? So like nature. So like it's Krishna saying, yes, in the sound of the birds, in the taste of water, God's there. And he said like the works of God, because there's the word of God, Bhagavad Gita, Bible, like that. There's the word of God. Then there's the works of God. And the works of God is the universe. So that's the works of God. And that's just like, because we think of like, okay, like let's say like the Enlightenment and the Renaissance, and in one sense that's when trust in religious authorities were waning, and for good reason, because there's so much corruption, like that. But we can see that those original modernists, is my understanding, like Newton and Leibniz and Galileo and Copernicus those, the scientists, really they had to do their science, they had deep Christian motivations. They wanted to establish God through his works and to show the laws of physics. So to bring forth the glories and the presence and the existence of God through his works. Now, of course, it led to a slippery slope when we get into, led to more and more atheism and things like that. But at least those original scientists of the modern era, the Enlightenment era, would be pre-Enlightenment. They were really that's my understanding related to birth, that they were seeing this whole nature, this whole universe, the cosmos, this is the works of God. So they wanted to actually enhance trust in the word of God through understanding the works of God. Hare Krishna.
My question on
Not that I'm seeing. Not that I'm seeing.
the work of God is also illusory energy.
Yeah.
And mainly it is his work.
Yeah.
And through a season in my life, I can see that there was time where I was really convinced, and even now, convinced that I'm on the right track, that my life is on the right track, I'm serving Krishna, I'm serving Srila Prabhupada. And then in hindsight, being in this different place in my journey, seeing oh, I was completely in illusion. And that again and again, that process, maybe today I feel wow, my eyes are really open to the illusion I was in, and then wake up and I'm awake. And then 2 years from now, I will look at today and thinking wow, I was so blind and so in illusion. And how, the work of God is, but still through that illusion that maybe now I'm aware of,
Yeah.
There was some progress. So I'm looking at that work of God, which is the main really one, in terms of everything else is subordinate to that one.
Yeah. Oh, I didn't catch the final
The work
sentence.
of God,
The work, yeah.
the main work of God is that illusion,
That
the
illusion.
Maya.
Yeah.
And everything else, the creation and everything that takes place,
Yeah.
or everything that takes place in our life every day is subordinate to that.
Yeah.
In order to create for us to finally surrender. Yeah.
And so I'm hearing your realization. Well, I say okay, as we practice the process, Hare Krishna. As we practice the process given to us by Srila Prabhupada.
Or before.
What's that?
Or before that.
Or before that, yeah. Yeah.
Thinking we are awakened.
Right. And that's the nature of Maya is the nature of illusion is we don't know we're an illusion. The nature of being bamboozled is we think we're seeing things very clearly. Yeah, like that. And so that's humbling. It's humbling. Yeah. So and at the same time we can say okay, this process is not the illusory energy of Maya, right? So that the process, and as we practice the process, we can see it's just I was so arrogant to think how I was freed from illusion yesterday, a year ago, 10 years ago, 20 years ago. So my first weeks after I moved into the ashram, I was a pure devotee. And not everyone realized it, but
But you
I realized it. Yes, right. Yeah, no, I was free from illusion.
We the conversation.
Yeah, right.
2 more weeks and they're gonna. See the line.
Yeah. So then, yeah, but then even, even within 6 months after those first few weeks, I was like, I was so arrogant. Like, but now, so, right. So then that's it. Like, there's a conversation and it was a morning walk and one of the, one of the students of Prabhupada during the walk, he began a question. He said, Srila Prabhupada, sometimes we're in Maya. And then Prabhupada said, sometimes?
That's the thing. I keep all the time, we don't know the are.
Yeah. So that can become discouraging, or it can become encouraging, that we can have like fear. Prabhupada said his greatest anxiety is that his followers are not scared enough of Maya. So to realize like, well, I was such a fool to think I was out of Maya, after 2 weeks in the ashram, no, 2 days. And I was such a fool to think I was out of Maya, let's say 25 years ago, like that. Oh, and then I was maturing by that time because I'd already been practicing 50. So then to see it's just like, yeah, I'm surely in Maya now. So let that move me, not to become depressed and discouraged. I'm surely in Maya in ways that I don't know because I'm bamboozled. Let that move me to deepen my sincerity, to take shelter in chanting Hare Krishna and serving Srila Prabhupada.
One more person using finding interesting, I'd like to try to share it, and this one relates to you were talking about like we're sort of created in the image of God,
Yeah,
opposite things like that. And part of the example was, maybe a little form oriented, like
Yeah.
form. But I think there's more to it than that.
Sure.
It's just even in terms of our being, like just spiritual qualities,
qualities,
and that. And then I just went to a place where, like, for example, in your language, you've taught us about like an approach to life that's spiritual, like not living a life of I have to, but
yes,
get to, and so like, is that also part of the way of our being that's in the image of Krishna? Like, Krishna has no obligations.
It's all get to. It's all get to. Yeah.
But he's got like the supreme I get to do. I get to, And so I was just looking at that aspect of being an image of God. Like sort of taking it the other way from like figuring things out in the world, and we're like, oh, Krishna's doing that, and he's being to the supreme.
That's it.
Like,
I appreciate it.
Gets to be the source of all creation. Therefore,
that's why it says Natasya Karyam Karanam Cha Vijayate, which means for Krishna, nothing God has to do.
Yeah.
Right? It's all pastime. Right? Just like in mundane life. Well, I have to go to my job, have to work. Oh, but I'm gonna hike in the woods on the weekend. I'll play golf. That's my pastime. Okay. So for Krishna, though, even the material creation, what to speak of the Goloka Vrindavan pastimes with cowherd boys and gopis, it's all get to. And so that's our nature too. That's our nature too. And so, because I gave the example, like, we move, we smell, we see, so those qualities must be in God. We seek bliss unending. We seek it in ways that are ineffective, that's material life. But that must mean that our source is full of bliss. We seek knowledge, means our source is fully cognizant, Krishna. We seek fulfillment through personal relations. So that means that Krishna is alive in personal relation fulfillment. We seek to avoid death. We seek eternity. We seek to, so that means Krishna is eternal and we're eternal. Itself in the image of God. Hare Krishna.
I was thinking about this idea of like Maya and all pervasive and some of this gunk that we're wading through and trying like battling all the time. And it reminds me of a verse in Proverbs, get wisdom, though it costs all you have, get understanding. And this idea of like,
Oh, could you say that verse again?
Get wisdom, though it costs all you have, get understanding.
Whatever you do, get understanding.
So it's like,
Yeah.
gives me this idea of like, you're going to really need to apply yourself to like, to not just be weighed down by the Maya energies. You really apply yourself, let go of all your material desires and aspirations and really focus again and again and again on what truly matters.
Thanks for that.
Surrendering, surrendering, and surrendering.
And then some more.
Yeah, thanks for sharing that from Proverbs. Yes, that's what he said. Because, like, again, as we mentioned during the class, like in this process, Chatrasa Dharma Bhajnam Sadharmata, there's no loss or demeanor, even if we do 1%. But we're encouraged to be fully full of wisdom, fully self-realized, full love of God, 100%. And that because the atmosphere militates against that. The atmosphere of mind militates against that. So we need to be like, like just like so profoundly intent and intentional, because the atmosphere, including the atmosphere of our own material mind and ego, militates against that. Let me give the example, like, let's say if someone wants to be an Olympic athlete or a virtuoso musician, like that. Right. So it's one thing, it's just like, oh, maybe, yeah, once in a while I'll hit the ball around. Once in a while I'll hit the ball. Okay.
You
like,
still didn't play together.
we haven't manifested that pastime yet. So that we oh yeah, if we hit the ball, and that's nice, and okay, we hit the ball and we get a little better, this and that, but kind of like, no, I want to play in the pro tour. Okay, it's just like, no, like, yeah, when I'm inspired, I'll hit the ball around. No, it's just kind of like, I'm gonna give 8 to 10 hours per day. I'm gonna give 8 to 10 per years. I'm ready. Okay, or to be that level of athlete, that level of musician. Like, okay, nothing wrong with hitting the ball around, but we're not going to achieve that goal of like world class. All right. So Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita, of all sciences, we say of all sports, of all arts, he says, I'm the supreme scientist. So this is much more important than being a champion tennis player or the greatest piano player. This spiritual love of God. So it's just like, so we keep that Olympic athlete in mind. Like, it makes sense that if we really want to get out of Maya and be fully alive in love of God steadily, yeah, it makes sense we're gonna need to work harder than the top tennis players or the world-class guitar players. It actually makes sense. Might be like, but it's like actual spiritual life. It's not cheap. It's not cheap. To think it's cheap, Prabhupada uses the word sahaja, to take Krishna consciousness cheaply.
Practice 8, 10 hours a day. Now you have to practice 24/7.
24/7. Yeah. It's true. That's true. And then the more we give ourselves to it, then it's not have to practice 24/7. Then it's just like, wow, I get to rise early. Then it becomes. Then we join Krishna in pastime, even within this realm. Bhagavad Gita ki
Jai.
Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Hare Krishna.
Namo Vishnu Krishna Vasaya Dita Vishnu